Hi, everyone. It's really great to see we've got so many people joining us. So thank you for being here. Before we start properly, I just want to let you know that this event is being recorded and we'll be publishing it on Container's YouTube channel and website a bit later this week. We also have live captions turned on for this Zoom call, so feel free to select that option if that's going to be helpful for you. To introduce myself, my name is Jess Connett and I'm the interim editor of Container magazine, which is a digital magazine about creative technology. We're based here in Bristol in southwest England, but we publish stories about technology from contributors all over the world. We've just celebrated our first birthday, so we're still pretty new and kind of experimenting with what we publish, but essentially we tried to get away from mainstream tech journalism. So we don't do product reviews, we don't celebrate billionaires, Silicon Valley tech bros. What we're really interested in is how technology affects people. So to give you an example, we've published a story about how virtual reality helped a woman through the grieving process after her brother died. We've looked at facial recognition technology and artificial intelligence learning being used at international borders and what effect that has on refugees. And in our most recent issue of the magazine, we published a story about how the anonymous internet has helped women in Pakistan to talk publicly about sexual assault, which is pushing forward the Me Too movement and societal change. So that's the kind of stuff that Container publishes. We also have this artist residency program where we invite somebody like Antonio to produce work that explores some aspect of technology and responds to it in a really interesting, creative way. And applications are currently open for anyone interested in applying to be one of our residents for 2022. You can find more information on our website, which is containermagazine.co.uk. So let me introduce Antonio, who is our current resident artist for issue 4. So Dr. António Baía Reis is a researcher, educator and artist who was born in Portugal. His education spans international relations, media and communications, and the arts. He has a PhD in digital media with a focus on immersive media, social change, and creativity. Antonio is currently an assistant professor at the Center for Media and Communication at the University of Passau in Germany and the director of their Future Media CoLab. He's also the co-founder of artist collective The Fourth Wall VR and creates live theatre and performance in virtual reality, installations and participatory art projects. He also plays the piano beautifully, which you'll hear a bit later. So for Container magazine, Antonio has created a project called Queer Echo, and tonight is the premiere of this work. So thank you for being here to see it. And afterwards, there will be a chance to ask questions. So if you'd like to ask anything, please do put it in the chat box. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Antonio.
Okie dokie, thank you so much, Jess. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. First of all, thank you, Jess, for allowing my sort of crazy, creative deviants to invade Container magazine. It was indeed a pleasure to collaborate with you guys, and you were very supportive, and you sort of pretty much gave me like this blank canvas to do whatever I wanted to do, and I pretty much did that. So what I'm going to do is, before I actually talk a little bit about this project, because I don't want to do this like I'm used to teaching. I don't want to be like just me talking. I actually want to open up the floor so that we can all sort of engage in a conversation about the underlying motifs and cultural, social, critical substances and materialities behind this work. I'll first show the work. So I'm going to do that firstly, and then we can sort of all talk a little bit about it, okay?
So, how do you think climate change is going to impact the LGBT community in particular? You think there's going to be a difference?
Yeah. Bro, you're asking some like useless ass questions.
silver in its silence. Moon pop, echoes of the day, wrapped up, rubble of the hours spent by the children's slumber, 1,000 tomorrows bubbling at their leaps, the dream projections lighting up the clouds, ample cotton relish the silence, as you will relish tomorrow, the honesty of such reckless noise, thick child feet of our unfeathered breasts, beasts we cherish, always run, sprints, to smash the mash of foot tumbling, rolling right into these arms. Charmed in their amnesia, regarding where one begins or ends, reminding us of the joy of first step and the storm after the holler. Mama, see! Mama, watch! Pitter, patter, thunder on a hard wood, heart beat this soul uncounted rhythm. Every generation, a temporal fugitive, running from the death greed. Every death keeps watch. Yesterdays, we weren't meant to make it through. Relish the memory ingrained in the sound, how these tiny feet grip the floor. Say tomorrow, make you tomorrow.
Quick question. So, what do you think of climate change? Like, really honestly.
Okay. To be fair, I don't really care.
Oh, okay.
The point.
Will live anyway.
That's fair enough. But did you ever thought about it?
Daddy.
Actually?
Alien.
Hello,
No, I've never thought about it.
Ready.
I don't know who you are.
The roots of climate change are tied with the roots of multiple oppressions. Climate change raises the hardships of trans and queer people worldwide. Because of this, queer liberation must be held up as a core concept of climate justice organizing. The queer community has struggled for the longest time for their rights and visibility. Hence, they possess a strong urge to fight a knowledge of climate change. To achieve safety and justice for the LGBT+ community, climate change must be realized. And for that, queer liberation must be lifted up in movements that address environmental crises.
Depth. I wouldn't, because I started out with I wouldn't differentiate too much personally, but I generally think since LGBTQ also includes a bunch of marginalized groups, it is to be expected that if things go south in this world, that they will be more impacted. And I like also what you, at least in my understanding, hinted at, that they there's already this conglomerate, this group, or this self-identifying social group of people who experience or see themselves as part of the LGBTQ community, who could mobilize, because there's already structures of fighting oppression, of fighting stuff, or being socially active. So that brings to mind a good opportunity to for a structure to use in the fight against climate catastrophe.
Admitted to the hospital again. The second bout of pneumocystis back in January almost killed him. Then he'd sworn to us he'd die at home. He baked his cookies, which the student wouldn't eat. Before he left, the kitchen on 5A is small, but serviceable and neat. He told me stories. Richard Gere was gay and sleeping with a friend of his. And AIDS was an elaborate conspiracy effected by the government. He stayed 4 months. He lost his sight to CMV.
I swear it will be, it will kill all the LGBT people.
Climate change, but is it going to be different from other people? Like,
no. I want that the climate change kill all the LGBT people.
Oh, okay.
They have to die, like my mom, with cancer.
If we, the children of the meek, should inherit an earth whose rainforest lungs breath a tale of waste, an earth where the ailing sea shut us in its own slick, if we, the children of the meek, should inherit an earth where the grass goes nostalgic at the mere mention of green, and the sky looks out of its depth when reminded of blue. If we, the children of the meek, should inherit such an earth, then we ask of the future one question. Should we dance or break into gnashing of teeth at the news of our own inheritance?
So that's it. This is the work, and I don't know if you want to ask me questions or if you want to tell me what you thought of it. I think we could start from there.
Sure. So I have a question to kick us off, but
sure.
if anyone wants to participate, like you can use a reaction. I think you can put your hand up and then I'll be able to see you, or you can like literally wave if your camera's on and I can come to you, or if you just like to put your message in the chat, then I can come and put those questions to Antonio. But the question I'd like to kick us off with is about the fact that you kind of placed this work in virtual reality. So I'm interested why you chose that as your setting. What was it about kind of using people's voices, but having them and having your own character in the show, but having it outside like a real world space that made you feel like it would fit this topic of LGBT representation and also climate change?
Yeah, well, what a tricky question. No, it's a good question, actually. So it was a bit of a rather strange process because I had one very clear idea at the beginning, which was to do straightforward live performance in VR. And because that's what I usually do, what the work I do at La Cuarta Pared VR, the fourth wall VR in Madrid, it's basically that. But then I thought, but that's the kind of thing I'm used to do with my group. So with the people that can sort of back me up and support me and give me all those. And so then I realized, so this kind of work, and was like, no, Antonio, this is like more kind of introspective thing that you're doing here. So I thought that just doing it in VR wouldn't be enough. So I wanted to make use somehow of my toolkit, everything that I have on my toolkit, or that I think that I have, you know. And so I wanted to express myself in the various ways that I've used art and performing arts, even in a traditional, more kind of way, non-VR or non-immersive. Well, that's debatable. What's immersive? If I read a good book, I'm immersed. If I'm like not just thinking about that, but that's another thing. And so what I thought is that, okay, I still want to embody a digital skin and create this sort of alter ego. And that's what I sort of did. I created this character in VR, and I very much liked it. And it was just super fun and liberating, creating this character with this like high-tech suit and that, you know, orange cape and that makeup, the long hair, you know. So that's me perhaps being afraid of losing my hair since I'm 34 now. I don't know. Probably I'm just projecting. And so it was interesting to create that character. What I like about the idea of VR is that I don't need a lot of production around me. I can just, and I didn't even build it up this world. Usually in my collective, what we do in Madrid is we build up the worlds on VR chat. We use the developers kit. We have a really clever and super talented developer, XR developer, who creates these worlds from scratch and sort of materializes our vision. I just, you know, went to this world on VR chat that I liked it. It sounded futuristic somehow. I liked how it felt when I was there, and I sort of put it on private mode, and I just recorded myself on that world. So that's the part of the VR thing. The more, like, I would say, the more social nuances around it would be that I'm very interested in understanding. First of all, I hate the word metaverse. I use it. You know, there's going to be one article showing up very soon that I actually have metaverse on the title, but I actually decided on that title a few months ago, and it's very hyped. I like the idea. I think it's very drenched with marketing significance, and I think we're many years away from that actually. But what I'm interested about is the turning point with VR going social, and the pandemic sort of helped. And so before, virtual reality was a very like individual, like very self-centered. I'm putting the VR glasses, I'm doing this experience. It's very like single player gaming, I would say. With social VR and the social, social media, social virtual reality platforms like VR chat, Rec Room, etc. So now it's not just about me doing an experience. It's about me hanging out with people, that I don't know on these alternate realities. Let's put it that way. If that's going to be monetized, if that's going to be the embodied internet, Web 3.0, I don't know. Let's see. But so I'm interested in understanding how us as social beings, how we act in these worlds, because now we have digital skins. It's like puppeteering. So I can be whoever I want to be. And I was intrigued in the beginning, like the sort of work that sort of the first phase of this project was me going on VR chat and talk with random people. And that's some of the bits of those conversations. I put it in the work, people saying, I want, LGBT people to die, like my mother died of cancer. Probably that Italian guy was just, relaxing on VR and going crazy, but then again, you're saying that to someone. And so that has meaning in itself, and especially if I receive it in a strong way, that's going to have an impact, even if it's just from one person to another. And so I did that, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to ask two straight questions to people, which is like, what do you think of climate change, and how do you think climate change is going to affect the LGBT community in particular? I thought I should have the most kind of neutral avatar possible. So my avatar was this floating orb made of metal. So I was pretty much an orb floating around. Obviously, my voice, I didn't change my voice. So they would, through the voice, they would associate, to a male kind of voice. But then again, the visuals were very strong. And so I didn't get like feelings, like I wasn't harassed. There was like no verbal violence towards me. And so, yeah, I'll shush myself so that I can give room to other kind of opinions. But yeah, I chose VR because I'm experimenting with this. yeah, and I think it's performance and theater sort of found their way through the crisis. That doesn't mean that theater is going to die in a traditional theater. No, my background is from traditional theater, and I was a professional actor in a past life. I'm sort of getting that back now in VR. But television didn't kill radio, and the digital didn't kill television. So I don't think that necessarily this is a new expression, a new art form, a new language. And so I wanted to explore with that. Then I wanted to put stuff that comes from other more like traditional languages within my toolkit. That's why I brought the piano up as well, because it pervades me as an artist since forever, I would say. And so I always come back to music somehow. I don't know. So yeah, thank you for your question, Chas. That was very insightful. I'm very happy about it.
Thank you. That was a really interesting answer. There's a question in the chat from Beck asking,
Hey, Beck.
Asking, did you find the communities you engaged with welcoming or challenging in any way?
Very good question. Crazy people out there in social VR, let me tell you about it. People just go crazy. And I think, okay, so let me do like market study. Let's go full on professional here and objective. I would say more than 80% of people on social VR are teenage kids from the US who just go there to troll other kids and just, release themselves from reality and just go crazy. They're very rude. There's a lot of violence and verbal and abusive language. So, but then it is curious. They're people after all, and they've got these crazy avatars, giants, and they just, most of the people it was difficult to engage in a conversation with someone, actually stop someone from running around yelling, but I think I took the more kind of approach that seemed natural to me, or that would work, which was like, I would have this really soft voice and would really try to calm them down and would be persistent. They'll be like, oh, you, I was like, okay, are you going to stop now? And can we actually talk? No, I'm just really, I'm going to go away. I would really love to talk with you if that's okay with you. So I would be persistent, and eventually I would have someone that would stop. And even in VR, they would be in this kind of awkward position. You could see through the voice, because they'll be mumbling like, oh, well, yeah, what do you want? And then I would engage in that conversation. So the kind of communities that I engaged, I would say mostly these crazy kids. Then again, I would find people, just very distinct people that you could see the way they express themselves and the way they talk. They weren't necessarily, these native kids born in immersive, crazy, and they actually engaged. Now, one of the examples I've put it on the work, this one, I think it's one of the last clips. This guy actually becomes very intricate and elaborates this discourse about the thing. Since there is this historical root in the LGBT community, for fighting for their own social justice, we can sort of emulate from that and use it to climate justice, because they have this kind of know-how of going through that process. And I was, wow, that's like, thank you. That was actually insightful. So yeah, and you know what, Beck? Then I started to looking for worlds that would, looking for keywords like queer, LGBT, etc. There are not many places out there, but the few places I found were very interesting. They were like safe places. So like places where the rules is like, this is a place to respect, and this is a place that if you go in, you can just talk with people. So for hanging out, which then brought this idea to me that we can actually use these places and curate them, perhaps, to create spaces like for public deliberation, for even externalization of emotions. There are safe places. There's no Omicron there. You can use your own avatar. You can use the persona that you want. So you a little bit like we use social media, but like you're not constrained by language. You're talking, you're using your body. So it's very intuitive. It's very organic. So yeah, that's it, I suppose. Thanks, Beck, for your question.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I love that idea that you managed to kind of get through all the horribleness of social media and then find this like little safe community. Like that kind of feels like the challenge for a lot of social media companies right now, to kind of get through all of that like awful stuff and actually allow people to be social and yeah, have the platform work in the way it was designed to. Yeah, there's a question here from Spandan. I hope I'm saying your name hopefully right. They say, I find it interesting the way you've designed the sound. It would be great if you could share your thoughts behind designing the soundscape.
Oh, someone asking about the sound, the underdog of every visual art, which thank you for that question, because it's usually the underdog and it's so essential. You know, to be bluntly honest, Spandan, it was just chaotic. Actually, it was very intuitive. It was very just pouring it out, actually. So going to the basic kind of melodic things with a piano. So the melodic parts, they were just like me sitting on the piano and just, you know, centering myself on the topics and what, hey there, and, you know, thinking about what the work was all about and the social meaning and what it meant to me, and just, you know, bluntly improvise it on the piano. Perhaps people might be expecting something more futuristic, more out there, you know, more like black box art installation kind of material. But no, I was just, you know, honest with me and the piano and sort of, you know, put it that way. Then it was a little bit basic. I love lo-fi. I've always loved kind of a lo-fi perspective, you know. And we think about VR, we think about actually refining sound. We think about, you know, specialization. We think about ambisonics, 3D sound, VR sound. And I thought, we don't need that. I was like, I don't need that here. I used VR for the medium to you know, to embody an avatar and perform, but then I can go full lo-fi. And there are moments where I feel that the power of the voice is very important, that I want it very clean. And there are moments that I just wanted to have a little bit of sound natures. That's what I used. You know, a little bit of desert there, there's some water there. So bring a little bit of that kind of echo materiality, I don't know, to the game. It wasn't like, I wouldn't call this sound design. That's very flattering of you. It was more like this construction as I, you know, went from one step to the other. Yeah. But sound for me is so crucial. It's so crucial. It's so important. I also did some work with sound specifically, like some soundtracks previously. And that for me is like, that's a kind of a different thing, you know. That's what I just, you know, totally look at the visuals, look at the story and just go full on the piano. Here I wanted to get that kind of musical substance somehow. And yeah, not to be so dry even, yeah. But thank you. Sound very important, always.
That's great. And there's a question from Ahmad in the chat now.
Hey there.
There were a lot of chaos indications, like unharmonized talks and images. Can you talk a little bit about the message you wanted to create from that kind of disharmony and that chaos?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Yeah, I wanted to be like that because the topic is still messy in my mind. It has always been messy in my mind. It is curious that if you go through my portfolio as an artist, I've started like a lot with music, with acting, like traditional stuff. Then I entered like media arts and started doing some crazy stuff. But I've never sort of explored directly the fact that I identify as a queer person, that I'm a gay man, and I never poured it out. I don't know, it never happened. I'm at this moment in my life that it sort of made sense to start to explore that. But then again, I was always very, how do I say, I'm always very self-aware of the kind of general discourse that is out there. And I'm not going to say that I'm more aligned with this kind of approach or that, and I'll go there. Let me talk about the fuzziness that leads to that, actually. So the fuzziness, it seems that it is chaotic. It is chaotic. So I wanted to, like, in a way, although it might sound a little bit cliche or, you know, even kitsch, but I wanted to have that kind of fuzziness, that disharmony, because it's still fuzzy for many people. There's a lot of prejudice out there. There's a lot of even this kind of strange entanglement that I'm trying to do here with climate justice and queer justice. At first sight, it doesn't seem logic, but then if you start thinking about it, actually we can create disconnections. And so, yeah, I wanted, to people to feel a little bit of discomfort, The final sound design, going back to sound design, actually had some metallic sounds there. And I chose to take those out because then it was too fuzzy in my mind. And I also wanted not to be completely out there and crazy, so that people could feel a little bit confused, but also, have moments of pure lucidity, like the moments when it's just a piano. It's for people to just like relax from that craziness and actually, have time to absorb what they're, yeah, but it's yeah. The idea, then this leads to this idea of advocacy, of activism, of artivism even. And oh boy, I don't know, sometimes I have this approach, then I see stuff happening in the world, I become angry, then I sort of become like more softened, That's why I don't have like I will never be part of a political party in my life, because they change like every month and it's so blurry now. But here's, in short, long story short, here's my honest approach about it. There's a lot of social agendas going now and humanitarian agendas, it's almost like a lifestyle thing, I go to Africa for 1 month. Oh, I do voluntary work. Oh, let's put it on Instagram. Oh, look at me. I'm so, engaged with the world's serious issues. So what that tells us about that person? Okay, they went there, they did something, that was something, right? But how is that micro action is going to build up? And then there's this like 3 big ideas that popped in my mind throughout the project. This idea of micro impact, this idea of social change, and this idea of social development. And we can sort of put these 3 in like in terms of time. We can like social development, historically something that takes time. Something like, development takes like 10 years, 20 years, even more. Social change might be this kind of change that's tangible. There's something that happened. There was some action. There was some agency. Something changed, actually. And then this micro impacts, which is the kind of thing that I particularly am more engaged with in trying to understand what it is, which is something like what we're doing right now. We're like 11 people talking about something. Just the fact that we're talking about something creates, dialogue and creates awareness somehow. If that is going to generate some tangible impact that is, measurable, I don't know. But I'm concerned about that. And I would love for that to happen, but I just want people to talk about stuff, basically. So yeah, and also the fuzziness is because I'm pretty much a bit cuckoo, and so I like making like crazy stuff. But yeah, a little bit. It's nice to see you, finally.
Thank you. It's nice to see you too. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for your question.
I think that the idea of the micro impacts and then the social development and the social change, I think that comes to a question, kind of links into a question that I wanted to ask you, which is, you'd said that you wanted this work to be something of a manifesto for LGBT people to think about taking action for climate justice. How do you see that happening? And is this a micro impact, or is it kind of bigger than that?
Oh, I don't even think this is going to be a micro impact. That's very flattering of you saying bigger than that. First of all, let's undress the classical idea of manifesto. So it's not politically based at all. It's a very straightforward person. I like the idea of a manifesto more. I would say I draw more like the design manifestos within design studies and visual arts, which is this idea that we can actually come up with a few guidelines or a few big ideas and organize them somehow visually and artistically, so that the message sort of more subtly comes through people. It's a little bit like, science communication. You got like intricate science, then you invite an artist, he does a performance. Oh, now I understand chronic asthma because they did a dance about it. So my idea is to actually do that. It's just, it is what it is. I chose those poems. I connected with those poems. They have a subtle message behind them. And, I hope it makes some kind of a change. Just the fact that I'm sharing this information and this work is a form of change, although it is a kind of just an interaction and a little bit passive, but it is a form of change. Yeah, but I really hope so. It can constitute as a tiny little bit of a strange manifesto a la Antonio, that, pokes people's brains. That is, and I know like we're like Omicron again and COVID and we're on Zoom again. How terrible is that? I'm so tired of this, This would be interesting. Like we're 11 people here. We could be like in a coffee shop now, having some nice coffee, some pastry. That would be wonderful, talking about this. We will be more engaged in actually talking, be more chaotic, because with Zoom, we get like, okay, mute yourself, unmute yourself. Even the interactions are curated. So here's what I hope for about this work, that somehow in the future, there's going to be an in-person screening. That would be interesting, and of like no cultural venues, like, I don't know, a restaurant, I don't know, next to the beach, come to Portugal. It's nice. It's always nice here. Or Madrid. Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? It is pouring with rain here in Bristol.
Good luck with that.
December. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to go somewhere warm and be somewhere in person? Yeah.
That would be cool. Absolutely. Okay. Okay, we have something. There's something from Beck here as well, right? I felt the piano. Okay, let's see. Hey, Beck. Okay. Ooh. So I felt the piano match the narrative of the journey in the sense of the discourse at the beginning and then the melody at the end of finding that community. Oh, very nice. You uncovered things that I did not while I was doing it. Thanks, Beck. Yeah, it was, the piano part is, I don't know, it's sort of, I'm very fortunate, I would say, because I've started learning when I was a kid, and I sort of explored piano in various ways. First, learning through more like a traditional academic classical perspective, but like for many, many years, I did these jazz gigs on this jazz bar downtown in Porto, on the city center, like for 8 years in the same bar. And that opened up a lot of hidden places in my mind for connecting with the piano, probably because of the amount of gin and tonics that I had with when I was at, but I'll only add 2, kids, don't drink too much. So yeah, the piano is always, I don't know, I always feel that if I have like an emotion that is not tangible to be defined by words, that is not susceptible to be defined by words, the piano usually gets it. And yeah, sometimes it comes out okay, sometimes I don't like it, but yeah. Thanks, Beck.
And there's another question there from Beck. What's the next stage or next step in this project?
Well, I've received an invitation from Hollywood yesterday. No, it's a joke. I'm gonna go full on blockbuster. This is gonna be we're gonna I don't know, actually. I really wanted this. You know what? Let me be a little bit indiscreet. When the last meeting we had, Chas, when we were talking about preparing this, and before COVID was sort of going to this like sudden crisis, I actually was going to suggest to you, Jess. I ended up, no, Antonio, that's too crazy. You have a crazy agenda. Don't do it. I was actually going to suggest, you know what, Jess? I'm going to travel. I'm going to go to the UK. Let's make it in a place with puffs and stuff, and let's have a group of people. Then I thought, it's going to be crazy, Antonio, don't do it. You're not going to have time. Then you're going to be overwhelmed. And that was good that I didn't do it. Then I had a lot of stuff coming up. And so I would like this, like, you know what? I don't want this to be like the lifestyle, send it to underground art festivals, media art festivals. I might send it to a cool festival that I like. I don't know, perhaps. But I really wanted this to be somehow part of a live event, with someone, with a group of people somewhere in the world. I don't know when or where, but that would be the next step for the project. This is pretty much like an isolated thing. This happened, and here it is. If I feel that I want to go forward with it, I might go through different venues or expressions or geographies. Let's see. But for now, I really wanted this to get out of Zoom and in a certain moment in time happen somewhere, with a group of people. That would be interesting.
Yeah, and the idea that this might be kind of a stepping stone or something that makes you think about ideas in a different way is kind of the point of the residency. Like, we want this to be almost more about the journey than the end. Like, we love that you've created this output, this video that everybody can watch and share and we can talk about here, but even if you had just done some research, some thinking, I think that thinking time is so valuable as an artist. Like, when do you get to be paid to do that usually? So
boom, just like that. £1 million I got from Jess. Just wanted to I got enough money for wine, for thinking about. No, you actually, that's a really good point there. And I'm an advocate for this idea of slowing it down. And I'm not saying this because now it's trendy to do digital detox and talk about it. Like, oh, you know what? I went for 1 month to the mountains, no internet. Oh, I feel so refreshed. I found my inner whatever, nirvana. And, thank you, Samuel. Hola, Samuel, ¿qué tal? So I like that idea, but here's the thing. Here's one bad thing about my life right now. So I'm a scholar, I'm a crazy artist or whatever. I have a cat, and I've stopped reading as much books like the way I was reading them, like in the 90s when I was a kid. And I was like, I'm 34, so in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was reading a lot. But I was reading like 1 book per week. If I read 1 book per month now, I'm like, whoo, that's crazy. But I like. Because as an academic, I have to read a lot of papers and I have to go through, my students' works and essays and stuff. And I read a lot on the internet and I read emails. So I don't want to see stuff. I just want to sit down and, I don't know, put like the shittiest thing on Netflix or go on TikTok and see the craziness that's happening there and just go full on non-intellectual, I would love to tell people, I'm reading 3 books a week, while I'm enjoying some hot cocoa and a blanket on my nice armchair, thinking about Dostoevsky. I have those moments. I still have those moments. But then again, I'm so overwhelmed of how fast things are today. Like everything for, today is for yesterday. So it's a luxury that we have like a full day for doing nothing. But it's not like a full day looking for, you can do nothing per se, but if you allow yourself to process the nothingness of, being with yourself, thinking about ideas, like even creative projects, like my students are and Thomas is here and he knows like my German students, they're still getting used to me because they are very structured. So is this an academic paper? No, I want this to be like 50% academic and then 50%, I want to know your opinion about it. What? How we're going to do that? It's not structured. It's like, take your time. Like some of my students are still brainstorming and the semester is coming to an end, but I told them, okay, take your time, even if it's a short paper that you come up in the end, that's fine. So it's a luxury taking time to absorb things. And, creative processors go so fast. You get funding, you need to have the idea on 1 week, the second idea, then the second week you have to be on the development phase. It's all about agile and Scrum and sprints. That's okay. if you're into that. But what about like taking one full month just thinking about the idea and doing absolutely nothing? But it's one full month of engaging with yourself, with your thoughts, and then pour it out. And so, yeah, I'm dying to get to Christmas time so that I can put an out of office and say, send me an email only if I'm dead, or something. So I don't know, I'll shush myself. I talk too much. Sorry, guys.
We are going to finish this talk in sort of
perfect
7-8 minutes. Yeah, so if anyone's got any last questions, please put them in the chat now. We've probably got time for maybe 2 very small ones. I have got possibly a big question, which is about climate change. Like, how are you feeling about the state of the climate change movement and where climate justice is right now?
We're doomed. We're all gonna die. We're doomed. Here's the thing. So funny. My grandmother is 95 years old. And like 6-7 years ago, and it's funny, she was a teacher. She was a primary school teacher. She's very lucid. I envy her. I'm not gonna get that old and that, healthy as she is. And like 6 years ago, she was doing this joke when the first big stories on climate change started to populate, news media outlets, and talking about, the rise of temperature and all of that. And she, from time to time, she comes up with like these strange phrases and sentences. And she said, you know what? The world is a big ocean of plastics. Just out of nowhere. And then like 1 minute later, she would say, we have to buy onions. We're out of onions. And so I like the craziness about her. And it's interesting because I never thought about it. To be bluntly honest, because I come from an acting background, we have such an inflated ego that traditionally actors are not engaged with social issues. I would say I'm 34 now. In my late 20s, I started to think a little bit I started to gain some perspective, not a lot, but I'm building up on that. Hopefully, I started to listen more than to try to get monopolize the conversations, and I started to understand that we, although I don't know the science behind it, I know some. I read some papers, but I'm from social sciences, so I understand them to a certain degree. But I've come to realize that it seems that right now there's no coming back. So like, supposedly 10 years ago, we were still on the verge of actually trying to reverse the situation, like the macro kind of situation of all of these things that are contributing to the planet slowly dying, basically. But when I saw it was this year, I think, this red alert, this climate emergence, shout from United Nations, and I saw the discourse from the speech from António Guterres. I was like, oh, now there's no way back. Okay, so there's no way back. So now it's all about how we're going to deal with it. Obviously, we can all say, hey, I'm 34. I can say, you know what? I'm going to die, hopefully, when I'm like in my 90s or 80s or so. I'm not going to experience that. So what I'm trying to get into my own mindset and slowly try to somehow share with people is this idea that we have to think about the long run. We have to think about, I'm a gay man. I want to have kids. I don't know when. I know that I have that, at least now I have that idea in a few years, perhaps. And if I think about that idea, I think about, so what sort of world are my kids going to live? And I know this might sound melodramatic, but it is as it is. So I can die when I'm 82. But then again, my kids are still going to be young, and probably there's like more volcano eruptions are going to happen, like the one that happened in Canary Islands, So I just want to talk about it, and without being extremist about it, just bluntly honest about it, and just expressing my feelings about it, even if they're not scientifically accurate. I'm not trying to be a tiny little Greta from Portugal or Al Gore. I'm not that kind of a person. I really just like to, share my ideas. Samuel, you like the Al Gore reference? Okay. So, Yeah, that's as honest as of an opinion about that I have, and I'm more interested now in learning about this and understand what might happen in the short term, because it's going to happen. It's starting to happen. It's scary somehow, you know. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, totally. In the UK, we've just had this very big conference up in Scotland about climate change, and it's just been constantly.
Yeah.
And
COP26. Yeah, I saw a little bit of that and read some articles. Yeah.
It just feels, it feels hard as one person to try to do something, but if every one person does something, then that's how we create change, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay.
Kind of to the end of our time. I just want to say Zoe left a comment, not a question, just a comment, just saying how much she appreciates everything you're saying. She found the piece super
lovely
and very soothing, and that it was great to see challenging art on queer and climate justice, an important intersection.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We also accept comments. We also accept compliments in the comments.
Absolutely. Should we put our Patreon? Here's my Patreon. No. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
So yeah, I think we've come to the end of our time here this evening. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and thank you so much to Antonio for presenting the work from your residency in this way. And it's been really fascinating to hear you talk around the Queer Echo project, as well as seeing what you have created. This is the final Container Magazine event of 2021, but we'll be back in the new year. If you'd like to be part of Container in the new year, whether you're creating content for the magazine or as our resident artist, as we talked about, do have a look at our website for all the details. Submissions are open until the 9th of January. That was the little plug I had to do.
Boom, just like that. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Stay safe, be happy. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.